Citizens of the Reject Nation. It is John and Coy Jandro here at the beautiful IMAX HQ in Playa Vista, California. And we just got done seeing Transformers Rise of the Beast. But before we talk about that, just want to say a huge thank you to the folks at IMAX for having us out. If you follow this channel at all, you know that IMAX is pretty much our favorite way to see most any movie. And a movie like this, at the scale it exists on, is absolutely the peak experience. So if you got an IMAX near you, go see Transformers Rise of the Beast at an IMAX theater.
If it's in IMAX, I see it in IMAX to the point where I have to schedule my tickets ahead of time to catch it, and that's sweet, sweet IMAX week, so see it in IMAX.
Absolutely, sir. And also, before we hop into the review, leave a like for Greg. Greg is busy at home slaving away on an emergency edit, otherwise he would have been here, and I mean, he missed a lot, because they actually, not only did we see the movie, Peter Cullen showed up, did a Q&A, it was a lovely...
And then stayed after to hang out.
Absolutely, he did. But anyway, Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, 7th live-action Transformers motion picture. How does it shape up? Well, let's talk about that. Neither of us is a huge expert on the vast lore that these stories come with, that these characters come with. We got a lot to talk about, and before we do, just going to give a brief synopsis of the film. I'm so prepared. Hey, how's it going, Jabby Calais? Just keeping everything on track right now.
I love Transformers. Optimus Prime and the Autobots take on their biggest challenge yet. When a new threat capable of destroying the entire planet emerges, they must team up with a powerful faction of Transformers known as the Maximals to save Earth.
Ooh,
beautiful.
Nice cameo.
In your best Peter Cullen voice. And yeah, that's actually a pretty succinct
very well.
way to describe the movie. A lot of it takes place in the 1990s, taking place after the events of Bumblebee, loosely acknowledging that as, you know, part of its immediate canon. And I know what you're all first and foremost champing at the bit to hear about. The Transformers across this movie are gorgeous to look at, as always, and there are a whole bunch of different kinds, because not only do you have the Autobots, but you also have the Maximals coming into play, and the Terrorcons, the agents of the god-being Unicron, who is essentially like the Galactus of this universe.
Yeah, I love that parallel.
I thought of you a lot during this movie.
There was a lot of like space cosmic comic stuff, and I was like, oh, they're going there.
Absolutely, and things that do sort of remind you of certain other, especially like DC kind of movies.
Visually and aesthetically, and even voice.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously Optimus Prime is, you know, the sort of central Transformer, but I think the character who really stole the show this time around was Pete Davidson as Mirage, you know, dressed in this beautiful Porsche packaging. I'm a Porsche guy, so I got a kick out of that. But what did you think of Pete Davidson?
Mirage made me so happy. I was thinking the entire time, I don't want to realize who this is because I'm having so much joy not knowing. And then when it was Pete Davidson, I was like, of course it was.
Absolutely.
I really think he nailed I have to be somehow the new Bumblebee without being Bumblebee, but also in a movie with Bumblebee, and a movie that will also be Optimus Prime centric. Like, that's a lot of things to juggle. You have to be inherently charming in small doses. You have to be charismatic in a really unique way. You have to be something that's new to the franchise, but also familiar. It's a really tall order, and I think delivered. I really think the bond between our humans and especially Mirage was uniquely strong in this particular installment of the Transformers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it certainly brings that sort of endearing quality, that your human main character bonding with him. So he's kind of filling the Bumblebee role. Even though Bumblebee does appear in this movie, certainly Mirage is like your most chummy Autobot on the team. And then obviously you've got Peter Cullen reprising the role of Optimus Prime. And this is still very much sort of his fight. It's an ensemble piece of these Transformers, but a lot of it does still center around his journey and his growth as a character. It's a bit of an edgier take on Optimus Prime because he is burdened with a lot of remorse and just the weight of his decisions in the parts of this war that have, you know, affected everything up until now.
And it's before he's had a lot of time to spend with humanity. He hasn't had the humanity, he hasn't been endeared to us, which I really like that take. So the rough around the edges had purpose. It wasn't just like edgy Prime. It was like, this is a guy who doesn't yet know what he's dealing with on this planet in a personal level, which I enjoyed.
Yeah. And I mean, neither of us is like a great Transformers expert necessarily, but there are times when you can tell maybe certain lines of dialogue in certain installments maybe don't ring true. And here I thought the times where they did flirt with the line of, you know, what his character's supposed to be, what the essence is supposed to be, it did serve that sort of challenge to his principles and his growth as a character. So I thought, yeah, it was mostly appropriately done. And then we have the character of Optimus Primal as well, the sort of head Maximal, these descendants of the Autobots that have been all through time and space and and are now, you know, joining the fight here in the present moment. There's a lot of timey-wimey
From the Beast
stuff.
Wars show.
Absolutely, from
Loved
Beast Wars.
Beast Wars,
which
dude.
Beast Wars is probably my best touchstone for Transformers, but I could tell you got the
big
love.
Beast Wars
So,
guy.
I mean, and a lot of people are looking forward to the Maximals first and foremost from this movie. How did you feel about them?
I was so enamored by the physicality. I was so enamored by the fact that it's hard enough to make a Transformer look like it's tangible in our world. It's even harder to make a Transformer look like it has authentic animal physicality, but also is a machine that also has authentic textures. It's a lot of brilliant computing. Like the first Transformers, I really think, as much as people don't look back on it as fondly because of like the 6 movies we've gotten through, it doesn't feel as novel as anyway. Like there's not a novelty to Transformers. That first one was mind-blowing. Seeing those special effects, seeing those pyrotechnics, seeing the Bayhem, that was a mind-blowing experience. This was that for these creatures. This was just as mind-blowing to me. There's a scene, and it's not a spoiler at all, but there's a scene where you see Beast Wars side by side with humans, side by side with cars, and if you'd just taken out the cars, it would look like a cartoon that looked photoreal, but if you just take out the beasts, it looks like a car ad. Like, it's all of your brain going like, I've seen this before, but I haven't seen it, but I have seen it. And it was this really beautiful suspension of disbelief blending all these worlds, and I really bought it in a really fun way.
Yeah, absolutely. I did too. And you know, they aren't the most heavily featured characters in terms of dialogue and screen time, but their impression is definitely felt, and they definitely do take advantage of that sort of mix between, you know, the more organic animal shapes and then, you know, the Transformers
Car mechanics.
They bring a nice new flavor to it, as do the Terrorcons, who are sort of your main villains, led mainly by Scourge, who I didn't even realize. Yeah, he's kind of the Steppenwolf of this movie.
And I really think it worked. I really think this landed with not only menace, but you're intrigued by him. As the character evolves, you want to know more. I think that the franchise overall, this is the 7th one of these. I think the first one is the bar that's set. I think the first one is unique, and I think it really is what people want out of Transformers movies live action. And then I think they've kind of strayed from that path. Like, they took certain notes and went really aggressively one way or the other. I feel like they've had to chip away back down to something contained. And I feel like this and Bumblebee are the most authentic 2 Transformers we've had.
Yeah, because I mean, this has all the action and the carnage and the cool stuff that you want, but it also comes with, I think, the right sort of cheese.
Yeah.
Like, whenever it dipped into cheese or hamminess, it was always in a way that put a big smile on my face and that brought me back to the spirit of, you know, just playing with action figures and being a kid in the 90s. And there's certainly tons of 90s just pop culture splashes
favorite character
and
in the whole film.
references.
Soundtrack. My favorite character in this movie is the 90s soundtrack.
Absolutely.
The soundtrack is so good.
It's a great throwback, and it definitely puts you in the time and place. And yeah, I mean, music is absolutely transportive that way. But I thought what they chose was nicely handled, and I thought this movie did a nice job of acknowledging that, debating that, and, you know, even though it is kind of silly having humans involved, still justifying it with enough, I don't know, just reason to suit the kind of movie that it is. And it led to some really fun moments with the human cast, which is led by Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback, who are both great. Like, this is a movie that doesn't heavily capitalize on, like, the dramatic side of the human stuff, but it does give you enough to care about with them. They are very charismatic, and they take the roles just seriously enough.
This isn't my favorite franchise. This isn't my favorite movie of the summer. But what I want out of a Transformers movie, this was. So if you love Transformers, you're going to love this. If you don't love Transformers, you might not love this. But it is what it promises, and I think there's an inherent 80s nostalgia, 90s nostalgia joy that is very unique to this franchise, and this is playing the equalizer of that very beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people were going off about, like, oh, it's the shortest Transformers movie yet. And I mean, it's not that short of a movie.
2 hour movies.
Yeah, but it does clip along in a way that does not overbear on you too much, and that does maintain that level of fun and, yeah, that throwback quality that makes you feel like you're a kid. And I mean, the action. Certainly you're coming to Transformers for an action movie, for beautiful visuals and crazy contraptions and whatnot. And it's not like the most everything is a money shot Michael Bay style, but there are certainly beautiful sequences that take advantage of the sci-fi, and then there are sequences that ground you nicely in, you know, the bits of the human stakes we do check in with. There are a lot of really good supporting characters, and the voice cast. You know, I didn't necessarily always, you know, it's like Ron Perlman is Optimus Primal. He does a fantastic job for the time he is there. I maybe wanted a little bit more of that. Michelle Yeoh is Airazor, who's probably the most heavily featured of the Maximals. Even more, I mean, in terms of screen time than Optimus Primal. But she does a fine job in her role. Peter Dinklage is Scourge, which I had no idea about. And there are a couple other really fun voices mixed into the cast for the, I mean, your main Autobot team is Optimus, Bumblebee, Mirage, and Arcee. But you do get a few other Autobots as well as Maximals and Terrorcons in the mix. Cheetor is in here. The whole thing kind of culminates in a really fun adventure that has, again, all the Transformers lore stuff that you want, and it's more focused on that while giving enough credence. It's kind of like a Godzilla movie. It gives enough credence to its human characters that you can endear to them.
I agree, and I think the pacing was one of its strengths. I think it's going to be good for kids that are discovering the franchise as well as people that have loved it for 40 years. Honestly, this was kind of a greatest hits requel. I really think this is launching a franchise in a really beautiful way. I think it allows for us to go forward while acknowledging the past, which I want our requels to do, but it does feel like a new world in a really beautiful way, and I'm very optimistic about the future of the Transformers because of this movie.
Yeah, and there are a couple big surprises toward the end that we cannot talk about whatsoever.
But you should avoid the internet.
But you should avoid the internet, and they're absolutely. So I'm very excited to see what the response is because it's something that I had no idea to even think about.
I yelped.
So, but yeah, ultimately, just overall feelings. What would you say?
I'd say number 1 or 2 of the franchise. I think right up there with the first one on Bumblebee. Like I think Transformers 1, Bumblebee, and this are all at another level, and I think I was really impressed with Anthony Ramos, and I was really impressed with the directing. I was really impressed with the world built, and I love the almost guy and his dog story that is the Transformers. I feel like there's always this like companionship that translate between Transformers and their human element that they really captured well here. So it's able to manage like a really good equalizer of all my favorite elements of Transformers in a very unique requel that feels like it's launching a franchise while giving some love to the past. And I think that's a really good place for the Transformers to be right now.
Yeah, it clipped right along. It had
also,
a lot of fun.
My favorite car, the Skyline is in here. There's a Nissan Skyline R34 JDM edition, which is the car that Brian drives in Fast and the Furious, and the color scheme of the Porsche is the same color scheme as Brian's Skyline, so I had a lot of Fast and the Furious love happening. Also, Arcee is Ducati, which is my favorite motorcycle. So they have good taste in vehicles.
There's a lot of beautiful machinery on display, from cars to bikes to planes to otherwise. And yeah, it's the kind of movie where it works more than it doesn't, and even when it is teetering on being cheesy or hammy or whatever, it is, again, in a way that put a big smile on my face and that I enjoyed from front to back, which is kind of all you can ask for from one of these movies. Did not outstay its welcome, definitely gave me those thrills. Great use of setting, too, between the New York scenes. There's some stuff that takes place in Peru and other parts of the world. And yeah, it got me optimistic. I would come back and watch more of this version of Transformers. So
I am optimistic myself.
Optimus Prime.
Optimistic.
That used to be, that was my nickname once upon a time.
Optimus
Not
Prime.
Anymore.
Now you've met him.
Terror John.
This is the first time we've done one of these on the street. This is fun.
I know. It'll get more refined the more opportunities we get.
I'm just proud of us.
I'm doing my best here. But yeah, guys, leave us your thoughts. Have you seen Transformers Rise of the Beasts? Did you go on IMAX? What did you think? And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Don't forget to leave a like. Thank you again to IMAX. Be well, people.
Reject Nation, roll out.